Marriage in Islam is not just a contract, it's a sacred covenant, a spiritual partnership designed to help both souls journey closer to Allah. It begins with the blessed word Nikkah, but its purpose is far beyond this world. It's a bond rooted in Rahmah, mercy, Sakina, tranquility, and Mawadda, love, not the fleeting kind of love the world glorifies, but the kind that endures through patience, forgiveness, and faith. Marriage is not about perfection. It's about two imperfect souls striving toward Jannah together. There will be storms, misunderstandings, and moments of silence, but every test is an invitation to return to Allah, not to turn away from one another. When a couple centers Allah in their relationship, love becomes worship, forgiveness becomes charity, and patience becomes a bridge to eternal peace. The goal of marriage is not merely to find someone who makes you happy, but someone who makes you better, a companion who reminds you of your purpose when the world makes you forget. True love in Islam doesn't end at death. It continues beyond this life into eternity in the gardens of Jannah, where souls that once prayed together will finally rest together. Marriage is a spiritual journey, not a worldly destination. It is not a finish line you cross or a milestone that completes you. It is the beginning of a path, one that tests, refines, and elevates your soul. In our world today, marriage is often romanticized as a fairy tale ending, the happily ever after. But in truth, in Islam, marriage is not about reaching an end. It is about beginning a sacred process. It is a means through which both hearts learn the art of love, sacrifice, and servitude to Allah. It is not the destination of happiness. It is the journey that leads you closer to Allah through love, mercy, and patience. From the moment two souls are united in a Nikkah, a new chapter begins, not merely between husband and wife, but between two travelers walking toward the same destination, Jannah. Their journey will not always be smooth, and it was never meant to be. Allah tells us in the Quran, "And we created you in pairs, that you may find tranquility in one another." So, tranquility is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of Allah in your heart during the conflict. It is that calm that comes from knowing your marriage is a means of worship. Every moment of kindness, every act of patience, every silent prayer for your spouse, it all becomes part of that sacred journey toward Allah. When we see marriage as a worldly destination, we start expecting perfection, perfect communication, perfect romance, perfect happiness. And when those expectations break, we begin to question the purpose of marriage itself. But when we understand that marriage is a spiritual journey, we begin to see the beauty even in the struggle. We realize that every hardship is an invitation to turn back to Allah, to rely on Him, and to purify our intentions. The arguments, misunderstandings, and disappointments are not signs of failure. They are reminders that we are human, still learning, still growing, still striving for something beyond this temporary world. Marriage, when seen through the lens of faith, becomes a mirror. It reflects your inner self, your ego, your patience, your compassion. Your spouse becomes a means of self-discovery. Through them, you see the parts of yourself that need healing, the parts that need humility, and the parts that need surrender to a believing spouse doesn't just love you, they help you meet yourself, correct yourself, and ultimately find your way back to Allah. They remind you that love is not a feeling that comes and goes. It's a choice renewed every day for the sake of the one who brought you together. The beauty of a spiritual marriage lies in its purpose. It is not built merely on attraction, but on intention. It is not sustained by emotion, but by devotion. In every smile, every apology, every prayer made together, there is a spark of worship. When a husband lowers his gaze out of respect for his wife, he worships. When a wife forgives her husband's mistake for the sake of Allah, she worships. When both raise their hands in dua, asking Allah to bless their union, they are not just partners, they are companions in worship. walking side by side toward eternal peace. A spiritual marriage acknowledges that both partners are travelers in this world. They will stumble, they will fall, and they will make mistakes. But they will also lift each other up, remind each other of Allah, and continue walking, sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully, but always together, always toward Jannah. This perspective changes everything. It shifts the focus from, what can I get from this marriage, to, what can I give? It transforms selfish love into self-love. It teaches that true success in marriage is not measured by years or wealth or appearances. It is measured by how much your relationship brings you closer to your Creator. And when you see marriage in this way, even separation or death does not mark an ending. For those who built their relationship upon faith, the bond extends beyond this world. It is promised that in Jannah, you will be reunited with those you loved for the sake of Allah. Imagine that moment. The same hands that once prayed together in the quiet of the night, now reunited in the gardens of eternity, where there are no arguments, no pain, no distance, just peace, love, and nearness to Allah. So, marriage is not a worldly destination. It is a divine journey. It is a bridge between two hearts, built not by human strength, but by divine guidance. It is a journey that purifies, humbles, and uplifts. And every step taken together, with patience, with love, and with trust in Allah, is a step closer to Jannah. A successful marriage begins with sincerity and continues through patience and mercy. These three qualities, sincerity and mercy, are the pillars that hold a relationship steady through the storms of life. Without them, marriage becomes a fragile arrangement built on emotion and expectation. With them, it becomes a sanctuary, a sacred bond that nurtures both the heart and the soul. In Islam, marriage is not just about companionship. It is about building a foundation that pleases Allah, one that reflects His attributes of love and compassion in the way two people treat each other. Sincerity is the seed from which everything else grows. When two hearts unite in marriage, their first intention must be to seek Allah's pleasure, to fulfill a divine trust, and to walk together toward Jannah. When your purpose is sincere, every act within the marriage, whether it's a smile, a meal cooked, or a forgiveness offered, becomes worship. But when sincerity fades, even love begins to wither. Many couples fall apart not because they stop loving each other, but because they forget why they started. They begin to seek validation, control, or worldly happiness from one another, forgetting that only Allah can fill the emptiness of the heart. True sincerity means serving your spouse not for what you get in return, but for the sake of Allah, knowing that every act of kindness is recorded with Him. Sincerity builds trust. It creates an atmosphere where both partners feel safe to be vulnerable, to express, to forgive. It prevents manipulation, dishonesty, and selfishness from creeping in. A sincere spouse will not seek perfection because they know that marriage is about growth, not competition. They will understand that love is not static. It requires nurturing, constant intention, and renewal. A sincere heart says, I choose you again and again, not because you are perfect, but because we are both striving for the same goal, to please Allah together. But sincerity alone is not enough. Even the most genuine intentions will be tested. That is where patience comes in. Marriage is a lifelong journey that brings joy, but also trials. You will see each other's flaws, weaknesses, and wounds. There will be misunderstandings, moments of silence, times when you feel unseen or unappreciated. These are not signs that the marriage has failed. They are opportunities for the soul to grow. Patience as sabra is not passive endurance. It is active strength. It means holding your tongue when anger rises, choosing compassion over pride, and remembering that every hardship is a test from Allah meant to elevate you. Patience teaches us to respond. It softens the sharp edges of emotion and turns conflict into connection. It reminds us that our spouse is not our enemy, but our companion. Someone who also struggles, also hurts, also seeks love and understanding. Patience doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means channeling them through wisdom, through the remembrance of Allah. When you practice patience in marriage, you are not just preserving peace. You are preserving your own soul. And then there is mercy. The heart of every successful. Allah describes marriage in the Quran as a relationship founded upon Dhamma Wada wa Rahma, love and mercy. Love may ignite the relationship, but mercy sustains it. Mercy is what makes you forgive even when you're right, comfort even when you're hurt, and listen even when you're tired. It is mercy that allows two imperfect people to build something beautiful despite their flaws. Without mercy, love becomes conditional. With mercy, love becomes eternal. Mercy is an echo of divine compassion. Just as Allah covers our mistakes with forgiveness, we too must cover our spouse's shortcomings with gentleness. Marriage is not about keeping score, it's about keeping score. It's about remembering that the one beside you is a human being, fragile, trying, and in need of kindness. Mercy softens hearts, heals wounds, and turns resentment into reflection. It is not weakness, it is strength. It is the reflection of Allah's attributes or Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, in the human heart. A marriage built on sincerity, patience, and mercy becomes a garden in which faith grows. Love matures. Not the shallow kind that depends on how someone makes you feel, but the deep, quiet kind that endures because it is rooted in something eternal. It is a love that forgives 100 times, that prays for the other in secret, that stands beside them through storms. This kind of marriage doesn't seek worldly perfection. It seeks divine connection. And when two people live by these principles, their home becomes more than a shelter. It becomes a place of the sixth sakina, tranquility, where angels dwell and hearts find peace. Their marriage becomes a mirror of Allah's mercy, a light that guides others, and a path that leads both souls to Jannah. Because a successful marriage isn't about how easy the journey is. It's about how sincerely you walk it, how patiently you bear it, and how mercifully you love along the way. When Allah remains the center of your relationship, every hardship becomes a source of growth. In a world where love is often defined by fleeting emotions and fragile expectations, keeping Allah at the heart of a marriage transforms it from a temporary bond into an eternal journey. When a couple anchors their relationship in faith, their love gains depth, purpose, and resilience. It is no longer just about two people trying to please each other. It becomes about two souls striving together to please their Creator. Marriage is a sacred trust, a divine partnership designed not merely for comfort, but for growth. Allah never promised that love would be without trials. In fact, He reminds us that life itself is a test, and marriage is one of its most profound forms. The tests that come in marriage are not punishments, they are opportunities for both partners to grow closer to Allah and to one another. When Allah is at the center, every disagreement becomes a lesson in humility, every moment of pain becomes a call to patience, and every silence becomes a reminder to turn back to prayer. Without Allah at the core, hardship feels like chaos. When difficulties arise, miscommunication, financial stress, emotional distance, it is easy to fall into blame, resentment, or despair. But when your relationship revolves around Allah, the same hardships become sacred classrooms of the soul. You begin to see beyond the surface of conflict. You start asking not, why is this happening to me? But rather, what is Allah teaching us through this? That shift in perspective changes everything. What once seemed like the breaking point becomes the turning point. When a couple keeps Allah at the center, they remember that love itself is a trust from Him. They learn to see their spouse not as their possession, but as a nahs amana, a trust from Allah that they are responsible for nurturing with care, compassion, and respect. In this awareness, ego begins to fade. You stop trying to win arguments and start trying to win Allah's pleasure. You realize that being right is not as important as being kind. You understand that forgiveness does not weaken love. It strengthens it because it reflects the mercy of the one who forgives endlessly. Every hardship, then, becomes a mirror. It reflects the state of your heart and your reliance on Allah. When you argue, it tests your patience. When you face loss, it tests your gratitude. When you feel neglected, it tests your humility and your ability to love unconditionally. These moments are not randomly. They are divine lessons tailored for your spiritual growth. They strip away arrogance, entitlement, and selfishness and replace them with compassion, understanding, and trust. Imagine two people standing before a storm. If they rely only on themselves, the storm will tear them apart. But if they both hold tightly to Allah, the same storm will bring them closer, strengthen their roots, and teach them to lean on Him more than on their emotions. This is the power of a God-centered relationship. It transforms pain into progress and conflict into connection. When Allah is central, prayer becomes the heart of the relationship. Instead of turning to others for advice or venting frustrations, the couple turns to Allah first. They pray together, cry together, and ask for guidance together. That act of humility, of lowering themselves before their Creator, softens their hearts toward each other. Prayer has a way of washing away resentment, of reminding the heart of what truly matters. When both partners bow their heads before Allah, pride dissolves and love revives. Keeping Allah at the center also protects the relationship from the illusions. It reminds both partners that marriage is not about status, wealth, or appearance. It is about faith, character, and sincerity. When Allah is the focus, external pressures lose their power. The couple learns to measure their success not by how perfect their relationship looks, but by how much barakah blessing fills their home. A simple meal shared with gratitude becomes more fulfilling than a lavish feast without peace. A quiet night spent in prayer becomes more romantic than the grandest celebration. And when hardship does come, and it will, they face it not with fear, but with faith. They understand that Allah tests, and that every test has a purpose. They remind themselves that the same Allah who brought them together is the one guiding them through the storm. Together, they learn that patience is not waiting for the hardship to end. It is finding peace in the middle of it, knowing that Allah is with them. A relationship built on Allah is unshakable because it does not depend on changing emotions or worldly conditions. It is sustained by something eternal. Even when love feels weak, faith strengthens it. Even when hearts feel distant, prayer reconnects them. Even when everything else fades, the remembrance of Allah breathes life back into the bond. When Allah remains the center of your relationship, your marriage becomes more than a partnership. It becomes a form of worship. Every act of kindness, every word of comfort, every moment of forgiveness is recorded as a deed that brings you closer to Him. And through every hardship, you do not just survive. You grow. You grow in patience, in understanding, in love, and in nearness to the one who united your hearts in the first bliss. Love in Islam is an act of worship. It is not merely a feeling that comes and goes with time. It is a choice, a responsibility, and a sacred expression of devotion to Allah. In a world where love is often portrayed as something self-centered, based on desire, attraction, or fleeting emotions, Islam teaches us that true love transcends the self. It is rooted not in what we receive, but in what we give for the sake of Allah. When we love someone in the right way, with the right intention, our love becomes an act of ibadah, an act of worship that draws us closer to our Creator. In Islam, love begins with the heart, but is perfected through intention. When you love someone, whether it is your spouse or even your fellow believer, that love becomes meaningful only when it is connected to Allah. To love someone for the sake of Allah means you love them not because they please you, benefit you, or make you feel good, but because you see in them a creation of Allah, a soul on the same journey toward Him. You love them through their flaws, not because they are perfect, but because your love itself is a form of gratitude and obedience to the one who made them. When love is disconnected from faith, it becomes fragile and conditional. It depends on how the other person behaves, what they give, or how they make you feel. But when love is rooted in Allah, it becomes unbreakable, because it is tied to something eternal. You forgive not because the other deserves it, but because Allah loves those who forgive. You remain kind even when hurt, because the Prophet said, the best of you are those who are best to their wives. And that standard of goodness is an act of worship. In this way, every smile, every word of patience, every sacrifice for your loved one becomes a form of devotion. Loving in Islam is not about possession. It is about purpose. It is not about controlling or demanding. It is about guiding and uplifting. True love does not blind. It illuminates. It helps both hearts grow in faith, strengthens their trust in Allah, and purifies their intentions. A husband who loves his wife sincerely for the sake of Allah will protect her honor, comfort her heart, and treat her as a gift entrusted to him by the Creator. A wife who loves her husband for the sake of Allah will support him, pray for him, and remind him of his higher purpose when the world distracts him. Together, their love becomes a partnership, not only for this world, but for eternity. The Prophet Muhammad the Savior taught us that love grounded in faith is among the most noble forms of worship. He said, when a man marries, he has completed half of his faith. This means that marriage, and the love within it, is not just a social arrangement, but a spiritual mission. The love shared between husband and wife becomes a means of earning reward, building patience, and reflecting al-Islam. When love is expressed through kindness, forgiveness, and gentleness, it mirrors the attributes of Allah Himself, Al-Wadid, the most loving. Consider how love becomes an act of worship, even in the smallest gestures. When you comfort your spouse after a long day, you are earning reward. When you listen patiently, even when tired, you are showing mercy. When you choose to overlook a flaw instead of criticizing, you are embodying compassion. These small, unseen acts carry great weight with Allah because they are done with pure intention. The Prophet said that even placing a morsel of food in your spouse's mouth is a charity. This is love in Islam, a form of worship that transforms ordinary acts into extraordinary blessings. Love also becomes worship when it leads you to better yourself for the sake of another. When you control your anger, when you lower your pride, when you strive to be more patient, all because you want to preserve the peace that Allah loves, that is worship. It is jihad of the heart, a struggle that refines your soul. The love that demands no recognition, that forgives quietly, that serves humbly, is the love that Allah elevates. Even when love hurts, when it tests your patience or brings you to tears, it remains an act of worship if you endure it with faith. Pain in love often reveals the sincerity of the heart. It shows whether your love was for Allah or for yourself. When you love for Allah, you understand that even heartbreak is not in vain. It becomes a lesson, a purification, a path that brings you closer to Him. The one who loves truly for the sake of Allah never loses, because every emotion, every effort, and every sacrifice is written in their book of deeds. Ultimately, love in Islam is not meant to distract you from Allah, but to lead you to Him. It is a mirror that reflects your relationship with your Creator. The more you love Allah, the more your love for others becomes pure and selfless. And when two people love each other for His sake, their bond extends beyond this life. The Prophet said that those who love each other for Allah's sake will be under His shade on the Day of Judgment. That is the eternal reward for love that is worship. So love in Islam is not a fleeting feeling or an emotional high. It is a sacred act, a continuous prayer, a reflection of divine mercy. It demands patience, humility, and sacrifice, but it also brings peace, growth, and reward. To love someone for the sake of Allah is to see them not as the source of your happiness, but as a means to draw closer to the one who created both your hearts. That is the kind of love that endures beyond time. Love that begins with faith, grows through compassion, and leads to Jannah. Tests in marriage are divine opportunities to strengthen faith and deepen compassion. In the eyes of Allah, every relationship, every challenge, and every tear has meaning. Marriage, being one of the most sacred bonds in Islam, is not meant to be a life free from pain. It is meant to be a journey of growth, humility, and purification. The tests that come within a marriage are not signs that something has gone wrong. They are signs that Allah is refining both four, shaping them into something stronger and more beautiful. What feels like a hardship on the surface is often a mercy in disguise, a lesson designed by Allah to draw you closer to Him and to each other. Every marriage faces moments of difficulty. Sometimes it is misunderstanding, sometimes distance, sometimes external pressures that weigh heavily on the heart. Yet, in those very moments, Allah gives couples the chance to practice the qualities that reflect true faith: patience, forgiveness, gratitude, and mercy. These are not abstract virtues. They come to life when you are tested. When your spouse says something hurtful and you choose to respond with gentleness, that is not weakness. It is worship. When you feel unseen but continue to serve and love sincerely, Allah is watching and He is rewarding you for every hidden act of goodness. The trials in marriage are not there to destroy you. They are there to polish your soul. Allah tells us in the Quran, "We will surely test you with something of fear and hunger and a loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give glad tidings to the patient." These tests appear in different forms, and within marriage, they can manifest as emotional strain, financial struggles, or even times of spiritual dryness. But every test carries a divine "trust me to hold on, and I will make you stronger" dollars. When two people face a hardship together and respond with faith, their bond becomes deeper than before. They move from simply living together to spiritually supporting one another. Their hearts become softer, their prayers more sincere, their love more rooted in something eternal. Tests in marriage also reveal the truth of our character. It is easy to be kind when life is comfortable. It is easy to love when everything is going well. But the real measure of faith and love appears when things are not easy. When tempers rise, when disappointments linger, when patience is stretched, those moments reveal who we truly are. Allah allows us to face these situations not to break us, but to show us where we need to grow. Through the test, we learn humility, we learn empathy, and we learn how to lull the ego. Every couple must remember that the purpose of marriage is not perfection. It is transformation. The Prophet Muhammad VII himself experienced moments of disagreement in his marriage, yet his response was always rooted in patience and mercy. His life teaches us that challenges are not failures, they are the essence of companionship. When a husband lowers his pride to make peace, or when a wife forgives her husband out of love for Allah, both are walking the path of the Prophet dwellers. Through these small acts of faith, their marriage becomes a means of earning Allah's pleasure. Tests also teach us compassion. When you see your spouse struggling with stress, sadness, or their own inner battles, you are called to respond not with judgment, but with mercy. Compassion is not just feeling sorry. It is understanding, listening, and standing beside your partner even when you don't fully understand their pain. In doing so, you mirror the divine mercy of Allah, who covers our flaws and forgives us despite our shortcomings. Compassion softens the hormones, heals emotional wounds, and invites barakah, blessing, into the relationship. Sometimes, Allah uses tests in marriage to remind us that we are dependent on Him, not on each other. No spouse can fulfill all our needs, understand all our emotions, or carry all our burdens. When we expect that, we set ourselves up for disappointment. But when hardship comes, it redirects our hearts toward the one who truly understands us. We begin to pray more, to rely more, and to see that even our spouse is a blessing from Allah, not a replacement for Him. In this way, the test becomes a bridge between you and your Creator, and through every hardship, Allah promises reward. The Prophet ﷺ said, "No fatigue, nor disease, nor sorrow, nor sadness, nor hurt, nor distress befalls a Muslim, even if it were the prick he receives, but that Allah expiates some of his sins for that." Imagine then the reward for a husband or wife who endures pain in marriage with patience and faith for the sake of love, for the sake of peace, for the sake of Allah. Each act of restraint, each moment of forgiveness, each tear shed in silent prayer is not, Allah counts every one of them, and they become steps toward Jannah. So, the next time you face a test in your marriage, do not see it as a curse. See it as a divine opportunity. It is a chance to learn, to heal, and to rise. It is a reminder that marriage was never meant to make you comfortable all the time. It was meant to make you conscious of Allah. The hardships you face are not walls blocking your path. They are doors leading you toward a deeper, purer love. And when you walk through them together, with faith as your guide and mercy as your companion, you will find that what once seemed like pain was actually the path to peace. For every test that strengthens your faith and every moment that deepens your compassion, you are not just building a marriage, you are building a bridge to Jannah. The ultimate success is not just living together in this world, but reuniting together in Jannah. In Islam, marriage is not a temporary arrangement that ends with the final breath. It is a sacred journey that extends beyond this life when built upon faith and righteousness. True success in a marriage is not measured by the years spent together, the wealth accumulated, or the comforts shared. It is measured by how much a couple's love, patience, and faith bring them closer to Allah, and how that connection earns them a place together in eternal peace. To live together in this world is a blessing, but to be reunited in Jannah is the ultimate victory, the fulfillment of a divine promise for those who love each other for the sake of Allah. This world is fleeting. Every smile, every embrace, every moment of joy within marriage is temporary. Time changes people, circumstances shift, and eventually, death separates even the closest of hearts. But Allah, in His mercy, has given believers the hope of reunion. A love that does not end at the grave, but continues in the gardens of eternity. The Quran reminds us of this in the verse, "And those who believe and whose offspring follow them in faith, we will join them together." 52:1. What a beautiful promise this is, that those who were united by faith in this life will be united once again in the next, where there is no pain, no separation, and no fear of loss. To achieve this eternal reunion, a marriage must be more than a social contract. It must be an act of worship. It must be a relationship in which both partners encourage one another toward good deeds, toward prayer, and toward the remembrance of Allah. The Prophet Muhammad said, "May Allah have mercy on a man who wakes up at night and prays, and wakes his wife, and may Allah have mercy on a woman who wakes up at night and prays, and wakes her husband." Such love is not based on worldly pleasures. It is a love that yearns for Jannah, that desires not only companionship in this life, but in the eternal one. When two people pray together, forgive each other for Allah's sake, and lift one another toward righteousness, they are planting the seeds of that reunion in the next life. To be reunited in Jannah, both hearts must be aligned with the same purpose, the pleasure of Allah. In this world, couples may face tests, illness, financial hardship, misunderstandings, even periods of emotional distance. But if they remain steadfast, sincere, and faithful, these trials only strengthen their connection. Every time they choose patience over anger, forgiveness over pride, and gratitude over complaint, they are not just saving their marriage, they are earning their eternal togetherness. Each hardship becomes a stepping stone toward Jannah, and every act of mercy becomes a reflection of the divine mercy that awaits them there. When Allah is at the center of a marriage, the love between husband and wife becomes a path to worship. The Prophet Seer described how even the simplest acts, a kind word, a loving touch, a meal shared, can be acts of charity when done with sincerity. Such love, when nurtured with faith, becomes a source of barakah, blessing. It fills the home with tranquility and the hearts with contentment. And when both spouses dedicate their relationship to serving Allah, their bond transforms from something earthly into something eternal. Their hearts become connected not by desire, but by devotion. Imagine that reunion in Jannah, the place where no tears fall, no hearts break, and no time runs out. A husband and wife who once held hands through the storms of life now walk together in gardens beneath which rivers flow. There are no arguments, no exhaustion, no worries. Only peace and joy. The struggles they endured in this world, the patience they showed, the prayers they made for one another, all of it blossoms into eternal comfort. Allah says in the Quran, "Enter paradise, you and your spouses." 43,070. This verse is not merely a description, it is a reward for those who built their love upon taqwa, God, consciousness. But reaching that reunion requires intention and effort. It means prioritizing faith over ego, forgiveness over resentment, and Allah's pleasure over fleeting emotions. It means raising each other's iman faith, reminding one another of the hereafter, and holding each other accountable with love and gentleness. In such a marriage, both husband and wife become mirrors for one another, reflecting back truth, light, and sincerity. They do not compete in worldly achievements, they compete in acts that bring them closer to Jannah. Even when one partner passes away, the bond does not end. For the believer, death is not separation. It is a pause before reunion. The one left behind continues to make dua, asking Allah to reunite them in His mercy. And Allah, who never forgets the tears of those who love Him, promises that they will meet again in a place where love knows no end. So, the ultimate success in marriage is not in having the perfect relationship, but in having a faithful one. It is not in having a grand wedding, but in building a life of worship together. It is not in living long together, but in loving sincerely for the sake of Allah. When a couple's love begins with faith, is nourished by patience, and is guided by mercy, it does not end with death, it continues into eternity. To live together in this world is a blessing, but to be reunited together in Jannah, that is the dream of every believing heart. That is the love worth striving for, a love that outlives time, outshines trials, and outlasts this world. A love written by Allah, strengthened by faith, and completed only when two souls meet again in the eternal embrace of paradise.